What is up, guys? Welcome back to the multiverse of movies. I'm your host, Isaac, for today, and we have multiple topics to discuss. But I actually want to show you this actual cool Funko Pop I got, which is this Luke Skywalker Funko Pop with Grogu. I rarely take them out of the box, but as you can see here in the second camera, you got little Luke right there with Grogu. A cool moment from Mandalorian season 2. I I love this. I love this Funko Pop, and you guys know I love collecting Funko Pops. And we got a lot of topics. The main topic we are going to discuss is Roland Emmerich's comments. Now, I did a review for Moonfall. It is actually together with my Jackass Forever review. So if you want to go check that out, it's on the channel right now. Maybe check it out after the stream. I also did a recent review for the brand new episode 5 of Euphoria, which I quite like. I really like that episode. It was a redemption from the last episode, and I quite liked it. There's also another message I do wanna emphasize on because I feel like a lot of people don't know this, but we do have a Spotify version of the show. It's gonna be like podcast format. Now, this is gonna be the second official episode of the Multiverse of Movie Show, but we already have the first official one on the Spotify channel. Now, we don't have Apple Podcasts yet. We don't have SoundCloud. That's because that's all much more complicated. But there is a Spotify version. In fact, some of you guys are listening to it on Spotify right now. But anyways, that's the only message that I really need to tell you. Um, and yeah, today we have quite a couple of topics. But to the people who want to know my thoughts on Moonfall, just real quick, since we are talking Roland Emmerich, I didn't like Moonfall. Moonfall to me is one. It's already so far as of 2021. It is the biggest disappointment currently in movies that have come out this year. It is currently the biggest disappointment, and I've not been enjoying it, or I didn't enjoy it at all. But I do hope you guys enjoy it, or whether you go watch Jackass Forever, whatever movie it is that you're planning on watching, I hope that you enjoy it too. But anyways, I actually want to get a quick message from Reverse Isaac from another timeline. Take it away, Reverse Isaac. And yeah, that's Reverse Isaac. To give you guys some context, I went on Max's stream for Movie Managed Entertainment on Saturday, and I wore a mask just to kind of mock him since he stays anonymous and he wears like a Doctor Doom mask, and I kind of just wanted to mock him by putting on a mask on stream, and it was funny. It looks like the Tuscan Raiders from Book of Boba Fett. By the way, Book of Boba Fett's new episode coming out Wednesday. First time I'm excited. I mean, I was excited for last week's, but first time I'm very, very excited because as much as I liked Book of Boba Fett, it's not lived up to a Mandalorian level or whatever it should be. But anyways, I do want to ask you guys to please follow us on our social media platforms at Isaac the Film Geek, both on Instagram and Twitter, which are on the screen right now. Link is in the description down below. And also, I want to thank all the members who are associate producers who are helping support the channel financially: Pedro Bonilla, BK Dan, Rhea, Jedi Sith Master, and Cobra Kai Never Dies. And if you want to become a member, all you have to do is hit the join button. And this is for the people watching the YouTube version. The Spotify version, you would have to come to YouTube, but you can join now for only 99 cents a month and help support the channel. But anyways, that's gonna be it for all that. Now I want to get into to one off the top topic, one that I just thought of right now because this all came out this weekend, and that is Obi-Wan Kenobi is set to have a May release date. Now, I'm not a fan of the prequels. I think the prequels are not very good films as a whole, but I did like Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan Kenobi. I liked what's his name, Christian Haydenson as Anakin Skywalker. I like those characters, and so I'm excited to see this show because I do think they were both talented and they did as well as what they could. And it's Star Wars. I'm always excited for anything Star Wars related. Star Wars is one of my favorites, and again, you can see it right here, the Luke Skywalker with Grogu Funko Pop that I have right now on the screen. But let's read this. This comes from the direct. The ObiWan Kenobi series is arguably the most anticipated Star Wars project since The Force Awakens and may claim that title for a very long time. After 17 years, Ewan McGregor will once again don the robes of the iconic Jedi Master, embarking on a journey during his exile following Revenge of the Sith. Fans spent years pushing for a new story about the crazy old hermit, and the time has nearly come for that dream to become a reality. Joining McGregor will be Hayden Christensen, who will reprise his role of Darth Vader. Plot details have been scarce, but official concept art depicts a duel between the former teacher and the student that Lucasfilm president Kathleen Kennedy has described as the rematch of the century. Also in the mix will be the Inquisitors, whose defeat at the hands of Kenobi will presumably encourage Vader to confront his old master and seek out revenge. We haven't had much, but there are some thoughts. Here's the tweet from the Disney Plus executive. He shared that in May 2022. It's released for Kenobi. He said, "Okay, our very young Obi-Wan will be saying hello there on Disney Plus." I kind of expected that meme to end up going in the Obi-Wan series. I don't know. It's just in my head. It's, a lot of these, modern Hollywood blockbusters, when they're from something from the past, they like going back to that because, it's a nice little concept. Also, we have 5 votes on the YouTube poll. It says, "Are Marvel and Star Wars ruining cinema?" Which is a question I put because that's what Rolland Emmerich's claim was. He said, "Are Marvel and Star Wars ruining cinema?" To me, they're not, but we're going to get more into that later on. I didn't even mean to put that, but in the poll it says that. But here's the rumor of Obi-Wan coming in May. Now, we've yet to have anything besides like concept art, which surprisingly isn't in this article. I don't have the image of it right now, but if you search up concept art, you would be able to find it. We've yet to have really anything for Obi-Wan. We've yet to have a teaser. Also, I hate how these magazines always have all these ads and all that, but we've yet to have a teaser, although the Super Bowl is coming up. Now, I'm not a big fan of the Super Bowl because I'm not even a football fan, but one thing that as a movie fan, I always look forward to is all the trailers, all the spots they play for the Super Bowl. I remember 2 years ago just looking forward to an Endgame little trailer or a little teaser that they were going to show it at the Super Bowl. I remember there's a Toy Story 4 teaser I was looking forward to. I remember even Zack Snyder released this clip of Cyborg, playing football on Super Bowl Sunday. I actually don't know when it is. I think it's next Sunday because I know it's in February because I do always watch the Super Bowls just for the commercials or for the ObiWan Kenobi series. Clearly, that's what I'm going to be looking most forward to. Although I'm excited to see what they have for the Batman. Although I don't think we should expect too much. I expect a lot of trailers for the Batman. I just don't expect to get any new footage really because right now it's crunch time for the Batman. Batman isn't that crunch time. Every time there's a month in advance before a movie comes out, I know that period as crunch time, which is when movies start releasing a lot of commercials, a lot of trailers to kind of bring up more anticipation, bring up more hype for a movie or show or whatever it is that is coming out. But there should be one for Obi-Wan Kenobi, and especially if it's coming out in May, because it's February. It's about to be March, and by the time March hits, it's going to be 2 months away from the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. I know they're planning on a May 4th release, which obviously May the 4th be with you. Everyone knows about that. But I am excited to see the Obi-Wan series. Now, I feel like I've yet to talk about the Obi-Wan series here on the channel. While one of my problems with Star Wars, or at least modern Star Wars, one of my problems with modern Star Wars is how they constantly keep going back to the characters. And look, I know one of those reasons is, having Luke come back in Mandalorian Season 2. And don't get me wrong, I love Luke Skywalker. I love seeing Han Solo is my favorite Star Wars character of all time. To see him back in Force Awakens, and we know the sequel trilogy was all about bringing back the old characters. Then you had, Solo, a Star Wars story, you bring the character of Han Solo, or even a Rogue One where you bring back Vader, all of that's cool. Don't get me wrong. Seeing these original characters come back. And then recently we had Cad Bane show up in Book of Boba Fett. And obviously Book of Boba Fett brought back Ahsoka Tano, Mando. They brought back classic characters. Luke, of course. Grogu, of course. And then obviously the big surprise for Cad Bane. That's all great. But one of my problems with modern Star Wars, it's we want to go back to the past. It's like, why do these characters keep constantly coming back to Tatooine? I get it. That obviously, if you're an executive, you're going to want to tie it back to the original characters because that's the big pop. That's the big surprise. When people think of Mandalorian Season 2, they don't think about the story. They think, I mean, of course, people think of Baby Yoda, but what they think most about is that finale with Luke Skywalker showing up and saving baby Grogu. And I get why Star Wars executives do it, but as fans, as the audience, I'm so tired of seeing the same characters come back. And look, I love Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I love Christian Haydenson as Anakin Skywalker, even though I'm not even a big fan of the prequels. I think only Revenge of the Sith is the only slightly decent Star Wars prequel film, in my personal opinion. But even with that being said, you know, if they're gonna give it to us, I'm gonna enjoy it, or at least I'm gonna be excited for it. I'm gonna be excited for it regardless. Also, let me check if the audio's working. Okay, the audio's working pretty good. But yeah, you guys let me know in the comment sections, live chat, wherever you guys are watching this from. Spotify. By the way, if you're actually listening to this on Spotify, please give us a follow and a 5-star review. And even if you aren't planning on listening to us on Spotify, giving us 5 stars and a follow means a lot because it does help grow that side. And, you know, some people just can't be in front of a YouTube channel. You know, it helps support. It helps support the channel in any way that you can. But with that being said, the next topic is Rolland Emmerich. Now, Rolland Emmerich did recently come out with a brand new film, and that is Moonfall. But one thing I do want to say is I think Rolland Emmerich is a great director. I think Rolland Emmerich is a fantastic director. He created one of my favorite films starring Will Smith called Independence Day. And if you saw my review, I was left disappointed by Moonfall. In fact, I think Jackass Forever is a far better film than Moonfall ever was. And also, sorry, I probably can't pronounce the name. Jalil Mutaki says audio is great. All right, thanks, man. What was I saying? Rolland Emmerich, I respect him for, you know, the great filmmaking he's done. And everyone knows him as the disaster movie guy, you know. Yeah, movies like 2012. You have Independence Day. You have a lot of films that he's worked on that are known as, you know, the typical action blockbuster disaster film. And I want to thank him for Independence Day because Independence Day to me is still one of my favorite movies of all time. It's probably one of my favorite disaster films. And as great of a director as he is, he recently came out with these comments coming to us from Deadline that says Rolland Emmerich slams superheroes and Star Wars films. It's ruining our industry a little bit. Now, we've noticed in the past couple of years, a lot of directors have come out and said that Marvel is not cinema, comic book movies are destroying, and, you know, the big blockbuster Hollywood films that we all know and love, those films are destroying cinema, and it's caused a massive debate within the movie fandom about people who are asking, are these comic book films, are all these blockbusters, are they cinema? That is a big question that started off with Martin Scorsese, who is in the logo of, you know, in my logo. Martin Scorsese is in my logo. I'm a big fan of Scorsese. And I know he started this trend of saying Marvel's not cinema. Then you had Francis Ford Coppola, who created 2 of my favorite films of all time, of The Godfather Part 1 and Part 2. And then we had, you know, we've had a lot of directors come out and just constantly keep saying Marvel, Star Wars, all these films are not cinema, which has frustrated me. And Rolland Emmerich is the recent director to come out. Ridley Scott was one of them. There's a long list of Denis Villeneuve, director of Dune. I'm a fan of Dune. Look, let me show you. I'm a big fan of Dune. Look, that was the wrong button. Sorry about that. I literally have a copy of Dune on Blu-ray. And Rolland Emmerich, I have a copy of Independence Day somewhere else, but Rolland Emmerich recently came out and made some comments. Oh, by the way, Kamazubi, what's up, man? He says, I'm glad your wife's boyfriend let you stream. To give you guys context, I constantly say that on Max's channel. But yeah, I apologize for putting that clip by accident. But yeah, it says Rolland Emmerich slams superheroes and Star Wars films. It's ruining our industry a little bit. I'm tired of seeing these comments. But before I get into my commentary on it, I do want to read his entire quote here on screen. It says, Moonfall director Rolland Emmerich. By the way, calling yourself the Moonfall director is not a flex at all. Moonfall director Rolland Emmerich thinks superheroes in Star Wars films are ruining the industry. He is among the many actors and directors that have lambasted the state of the movie business because these types of movies exist. He sat down with Den of Geek while talking about his newest disaster film. He mentions because naturally, okay, here's the comment, because naturally Marvel and DC Comics and Star Wars have pretty much taken over, he said. And then he comes out and says, it's ruining our industry a little bit, but nobody does anything original anymore, which is the biggest lie every movie fan says. I'm sorry, I've heard that comment said many times, saying that Hollywood's not original anymore and that they're going back to reboots and sequels, when the reality is, and this has been factually proven, you can go ahead and do your research, right now there are more original movies than there ever have been. More than the 90s, more than the 80s, more than the early 2000s, more than the 70s. Now, the truth is there are more reboots, sequels, and spin-offs now more than back in the day. That's undeniably the truth. But the problem is a lot of fans keep saying, oh, Hollywood doesn't do anything original, but yet proceed to not watch Last Night in Soho or The Last Duel or House of Gucci. There are all these original films, but you don't check them out. The problem isn't that there isn't any of these. It's just that you're not checking them out. And I'm so tired of having to debate people telling me that, oh, Hollywood's not original. There was a lot of original movies that came out this year. What's the problem? If you want to go watch original films, then go watch them. And then there's even Netflix, there's HBO Max, there's Hulu, there's all these streaming services. There's a lot of platforms that original films. Red Notice, that one DiCaprio film, I don't know what's it called. Don't Look Up. There we go. I for some reason almost forgot. Tick Tick Boom. Then you even got Encanto that recently came out. West Side Story is a reboot. My bad. I almost brought up West Side Story. But there's been a lot of movies that are brand new, original. The problem is the audience isn't looking. So when I see a director as respected as Rolland Emmerich saying that nobody does anything original anymore, to me it's a very, very, very ignorant comment. Let me read the rest of it. Oh, my computer's loading. Oh. Emmerich claims to be all about originality and believes that Christopher Nolan is making bold choices when it comes to filmmaking. That I agree. I do like that Christopher Nolan doesn't want to do anything that's not his property, and I like that. I like, even if it is his property, he doesn't even do sequels besides like The Dark Knight, but that's a different circumstance right there. But you have movies like Tenet, Inception, Interstellar, Insomnia. You have all these films, and he doesn't do like spin-offs or anything like that. But let me read the rest of the comment if my computer lets me. By the way, I gotta get a new computer because this thing it's a very good functioning computer, but sometimes it'll just starts acting a little idiotic. It says you should make bold new movies, and I think actually Christopher Nolan is a master of that. He is someone who can make movies about whatever he wants. He said, I have it a little bit harder, but I still have a big enough name, especially when it's a disaster or has some sort of disaster theme. He's made a name for himself directing several big budget films like Independence Day and its sequel Resurgence, The Day After Tomorrow. Oh my God, I completely forgot what to say. The Day After Tomorrow, 2012. 10,000 Haley Berry and Patrick Wilson, Michael Pena, John Bradley, Donald Sutherland, and a lot of that. The movie. Oh, by the way, I didn't even know but it's on 40% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's 40% on Rotten Tomatoes. That's not a good score. Look, actually, let me read some comments and then I'll get into what Rolland Emmerich said. Jalil sorry if I mispronounced it. Jail Mutaki says that spits in the face of unknown filmmakers who put their hearts in their projects. That's true. That's true right there. You perfectly worded it. He's basically spitting in the face of people who make these films or anyone who loves these films. But then Ryan Porter says Rolland Emmerich is responsible for destroying Godzilla back in 1998. Yeah, I forgot about that. And look, I'm not going to lie to you. I still love Rolland Emmerich's films, even though I didn't like Moonfall. I still respect the man. And I think, I think Independence Day is still one of my favorite films of all time. With that being said, you've seen my videos on Denis Villeneuve. You've seen my videos on Ridley Scott. You've seen my videos on Martin Scorsese. And then other actors, have said things like Marvel, Star Wars, and, all these blockbuster films, which is what I'm going to refer them. They're blockbusters. These blockbuster films that they're claiming that they're ruining cinema. Jennifer Aniston recently also came out, said something like that. Or not recently, that was like a year ago probably. But with that all said, the problem isn't their thoughts. Look, if Roland Emmerich had come out and said, hey, you know what? Star Wars, Marvel, DC, all these films, they're not for me. I'm fine if he says that. Because at the end of the day, all films subjective. If you don't like Marvel, if you don't like Star Wars, if you don't like blockbuster, that's great. That is your personal preference. I personally love blockbusters, but they're not the only films I watch. I like watching drama. I like watching comedy. I love watching all kinds of films. The problem isn't what Roland Emmerich said. The problem isn't what Roland Emmerich thinks about these films. The problem is how he worded it. And the same applies to Martin Scorsese. The same applies to Ridley Scott. The same applies to all these other filmmakers. And that is professionalism and showing a little bit of class. Because Roland Emmerich isn't just some small, nobody cares about person like me. Okay? Roland Emmerich is a big, well-known name in Hollywood. He is somebody who's insanely respected, and and a lot of future filmmakers, they look up to him. Some people idolize Roland Emmerich. Same thing with Scorsese, same thing with Ridley Scott. The problem with the comments is they're very ignorant and they show a lack of professionalism and a lack of class. These movies are not ruining cinema. Nobody can explain to me why they're ruining cinema, but somebody explain to me. Roland Emmerich then provided an explanation. All he said is, these movies are bad for cinema. How are they bad? Especially during a pandemic when Spider-Man No Way Home did practically the impossible and brought a $1 billion hit on the table during a pandemic where movies were struggling financially. Where literally a Christopher Nolan movie, who he somehow wants to idolize so much, Christopher Nolan, he idolizes Christopher Nolan. His movie only made like $300 million. Tenet, a movie like Tenet should not be making that little money, and I think it made a little less than that. But somebody as great as Roland Emmerich, with so much professionalism, so much class, this shows a lack of it. Is this going to change my perspective on his films? Absolutely not. But somebody like Roland Emmerich should not be making these stupid, moronic, idiotic comments because they show a lack of class. If Roland Emmerich had come out and said, hey, you know what, these movies aren't for me, which is the same thing Scorsese should have said, although that's how he started off, but then later on changed his perspective. This is what Francis Ford Coppola should have said. This is what Ridley Scott should have said. If they don't like these movies, then say, hey, you know what, these movies aren't for me. Because that's the truth about every film ever. Not every movie is for everyone. Some of you guys are going to like Dune. Some of you guys are not. That's okay. You got movies like Last Night in Soho. Some of you guys are going to like Last Night in Soho, but some of you guys are not. Because that's the beauty of film. Film is subjective, and that's great about it. That's the beauty of cinema. Our differences. We should cherish, how different and unique our perspective on film is. But when you have these comments from a guy like Roland Emmerich, it shows a little bit of ignorance, and it shows, again, a lack of professionalism. Somebody in the position of Roland Emmerich should not be making comments like this, saying something as idiotic as it's ruining our industry a little bit. And this is coming from the guy who made Moonfall. By the way, comic book movies and Roland Emmerich movies are vastly similar. The only difference is comic book movies happen to have superpowered characters. That is literally the only difference between these films. And how is it ruining the industry? Moonfall is literally a story about guys trying to prevent the moon from destroying Earth. Do you understand how silly of a concept that is? And it's not like you executed it very well. Comic book movies are similar in that way. And let's see, where's his main comments. And look, he said, oh wait, that's not the comments I wanted to look for. Where was this first comments? He says, because naturally Marvel and DC Comics and Star Wars have pretty much taken over, he said. And look, that's true. Marvel, DC, Star Wars, they've taken over cinema. But that's not a bad thing. Because even those small independence films that you're looking forward to, they exist. They exist. It's not like they went away. The only difference is those directors from back then aren't here to make those movies. I mean, some of them are, like Scorsese still directs, obviously. But, excuse me. But they're not they have taken over, but they're not ruining the industry, and that is the point. And especially when you say something as ignorant as there are no more original films, that is the most moronic comment any movie fan can say, because that is not the truth. The difference is you're not going to watch those films because they're not appealing to you. They're not appealing to you. But the comments of saying, Marvel, DC, Star Wars, they're the problem. They're the boogeyman. That's somehow a lot of people want to go out and make that they are the boogeyman. We should be celebrating the success of these films. We should be celebrating the success that these movies are doing financially. We shouldn't be crying over. We shouldn't, like, even if you don't like these movies, this is a celebration because this brings back people. This brings back people to the theaters, and especially during a time period where the pandemic has eaten up the box office. It has been proven to be destroying the box office and limiting the financial success that movies should be having. With all that, comic book movies right now are currently the only ones saving the industry. Movie fans do not care whether it's a comic book movie. The general audience doesn't care whether it's a Star Wars movie. At the end of the day, just make a good movie. And the problem with this comment is he said this prior to Moonfall coming out, already making excuses. Moonfall did not fail because Marvel exists. Moonfall failed because it wasn't a good film. It wasn't a good film. Or at least in my personal perspective, and a lot of people agree with me. A lot of people agree that Moonfall is not a very good film. Maybe instead of focusing on what Marvel's doing or what Star Wars is doing, how about you focus on making the best movie possible? Let us lesser people discuss that topic. Show some professionalism, show some class, and show us how great of a filmmaker you are by making good films. Maybe if you put that energy that you put on Marvel and DC and Star Wars and whatever franchises you believe are ruining the industry, maybe instead of putting your energy on criticizing those films, then put that same energy to your films. And look, this is a director that I respect a lot. Independence Day, I probably have a Blu-ray copy down there of Independence Day. But again, when you're a big director, when people look up to you, a lot of people know him as the master of the disaster film. When you're looked up to at that point, then you should be showing your professionalism. I don't like it when athletes or celebrities bash each other because it shows a lack of professionalism, especially when you're in the same business. And to say that all these movies are ruining the industry is the most ignorant thing anyone can say. Because even if these movies didn't exist, guess what? The same thing would happen. People would only go watch your movie if the trailer looked good. But Kamazubi puts out a couple paragraphs. He says, I think he means that smaller films that are better than Marvel and Star Wars are slept on because they aren't a part of the franchise or are adapting from source material, although I do disagree with him. And look, I understand that's what he meant. I understand what he meant. Because it is true. Last Duel didn't do financially well. House of Gucci didn't do all that well. All these original films that did come out are not doing all that well. But again, your focus should be on making good films. People are gonna go watch it. Look at Encanto. Encanto is not based on another. Why am I messing up? On another IP. It is its own original movie, and guess what? That movie is doing pretty well. Although box office not all that well, but it's doing pretty well. And then you have Tick Tick Boom, which is already getting Oscar buzz. It's an original film, and guess what? A lot of people love that film. Just focus on making a great film. Don't focus on what Marvel is doing. Don't focus on what Star Wars is doing. Focus on making the best movie possible. But Kamazu says, I respect directors trying to do original things and are trying to make great movies. Yeah, I always respect directors. To me, when a movie's good, I give all the credit to a director. But when a movie's bad, I'll still give all the credit to a director, because the director to me is the most important part of filmmaking. It's the most important part. For example, House of Gucci, Ridley Scott. I like that movie a lot, so I give Ridley Scott all the credit. But let's say a movie like Spider-Man No Way Home, I give John Watts the credit. Or like, Rolland Emmerich, I give him all the credit for how bad Moonfall was. To me, it is about the filmmaker. And then Kamazubi says, but when you blame these franchises like this, it makes you look petty. It does. It really does. And a filmmaker who has so much experience in the business, who's been here for multiple decades, who has made films that a lot of people look up to, who a lot of future filmmakers look up to. When you're in that position, you should be showing class. And it's not just that he's criticizing movies. Like, I know a lot of people just look at Marvel, DC, and Star Wars as franchises. There are also people involved in working in these films, including directors who are in the same field as you. And to come out and just automatically just say Marvel, DC, Star Wars, you're criticizing James Gunn, you're criticizing John Watts, Christopher Nolan has made 3 comic book movies. When you criticize all these filmmakers, you show an insane lack of class, and to me, I cannot respect. Oh my god, some Russian bot. Come on, sorry guys. There's a Russian bot who is commenting on my chat. The problem again isn't what he thinks, and again, not everyone's gonna like Star Wars. Not everyone's gonna like Marvel. Not everyone's gonna like the superhero comic book franchises. But guess what? As a filmmaker, your focus shouldn't be on what another movie's doing. Your focus should be on how good or how bad your movie is. And Ridley Scott, this is not what Ridley Scott should be doing. It shouldn't. Let me delete this tab. But seeing Ridley Scott embarrass himself this way, and this is a guy I respect a lot. This is a guy who has made great films, and I don't get why he's stooping so low to being that petty. Because you've had Scorsese, you had Ridley Scott, you've had all these directors. For some reason, now it's the cool thing to call out Marvel. It's always like that. When something's popularized, and it has this massive media attention. When it has all this mass media attention, the cool thing is to not like it. Like, for example, I don't know, let's say a famous musician comes out, it's a cool thing to say, well, I don't like that musician, or I don't like this, or I don't like that, because the cool thing is always to not like something. And it frustrates me that people are like that. Some people will purposely not like something. To me, just enjoy what it is you enjoy. And again, Ridley Scott's comments, the problem isn't Marvel, DC, Star Wars. The problem is when you're not making good films. Because, and I think he said a comment, which I don't know if it was here. Let me see if I can pop it up. Let's see. Let me go back to the screen. Is there any more comments? I think that was all the comments. I swear, he said something else. Okay, so let's read this back. He says, you should make new, bold movies, and I think actually Christopher Nolan is a master of that, which I actually agree. I do think when it comes to original filmmaking, Christopher Nolan currently is the king of doing all that. But he says, I have it a little bit harder, but I still have a big enough name, especially when it's disaster or has some sort of disaster theme. And again, why did he have to? He could have just been like, hey, you know what? Those movies aren't for me. Like Scorsese. I know a lot of people got mad at Scorsese when he made his first comments, but I think the best way, any director that doesn't like these blockbuster films, the best way to address them is by looking at Scorsese's comments and saying what he said, which was basically, all he said was, hey, look, these movies are not for me. They're not my kind of cinema. That's what he said. Now, after that, he did start dumbing down and started saying much more ridiculous and stupid comments after that. But his first original comments, I think he perfectly gave he perfectly answered the question. And I hate these movie nerds, these film nerds, these film school wannabe, Christopher Nolan wannabe, Steven Spielberg wannabe nerds who talk about film, saying, oh yes, well this is in cinema. Oh yes, I only watched The Godfather. Those people. One thing I notice about them is, Scorsese was right about them not being cinema. To me, cinema is just a movie in the theater, or just experiencing a movie. That's what cinema is. Whether it's Dune, Last Night in Soho, Independence Day, Godzilla 98, Godzilla 2014, Godzilla vs. Kong, whatever movie it is, at the end of the day, it's all cinema. It's all cinema. It's just that you just don't happen to like that movie that somebody else likes. That is the only difference. That is seriously the only difference. And also Kamazubi says, I don't get the point of these bots. Yeah, for some reason I notice on a lot of YouTube chats there'll be like a lot of Russian bots trying to promote something. It's weird. I don't get the point of them. I don't get the point of why they even exist. Like, what do they expect to accomplish? But the problem isn't these movies specifically. And the problem with the comments that he made, the problem isn't what he thinks about these movies. The problem is how he said it. Because there is you have to show professionalism. It's something why I don't talk about other YouTubers all that often, because I want to try showing professionalism to other people in my same position. You rarely hear, like in the United States, you rarely hear another president talk bad about a previous president or a future candidate for presidency. You rarely hear that, because it shows professionalism. Same thing with athletes. I don't know, LeBron James will never talk bad about James Harden. I mean, you have the occasional, James Harden did talk bad about Giannis Antetokounmpo, but athletes do respect each other, and I think the same applies to filmmakers, especially when you're in the same field. Show some class, especially when you're someone who's been in the industry for over 20 years. Especially when you're somebody in the position that Rolland Emmerich is, you should be showing professionalism. You should be showing how much class you have, and especially when it comes to this big of a topic. And again, the problem isn't these movies. You don't disgrace people by making these movies. The biggest disgrace you could do to any audience member is making bad movies, by wasting a person's time to make these movies. Going to the movies is an investment. Us movie fans, we don't think about it that way. Us movie fans, we just think about it as having another great time in the theater. But to the general audience, which makes up 70% of the people going to these movies, to them, they don't care what movie it is, as long as the trailers look good and as long as you entice them, as long as you get them intrigued in what it is you're trying to say, or what kind of film you're trying to make in general. And again, it is an investment. It's not just an investment of time, it's also an investment of money. It's $11. I know to some people $11 is a little, but you're still spending $11 nonetheless, because with $11, realistically, you could be getting anything, whether it's this Funko Pop, whether it's a meal at a restaurant. And not only that, but it's also investment time, because on average, you're going to be spending 2 hours. Even if driving over there, driving back, the commercials that are there, and then depending on how long the film is, you're going to be there for about 2 hours. About 2 hours. Maybe more, maybe less, I don't know. But that's about the time you're there. And when you deliver to them a poorly made film, that's what pisses off the audience. It's not whether it's Marvel. It's not whether it's Star Wars. It's not whether it's DC. It's not whether it's Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, whatever it is. It's none of that. It's about making a good film. And I don't get why it's seen as so complicated. And also, let's look at the poll. There's 8 votes so far on the poll. 75% of you guys believe that Marvel and Star Wars are not ruining cinema, and then 25% of you guys are saying yes. And for the people who do believe they're ruining cinema, you guys let me know in the chat or comment sections or wherever, or Spotify, message me, whatever. You guys let me know what really is the problem, because I'm not seeing it. I don't see where the problem is. And it's not about whether you like these movies or not. It's about the industry as a whole, because as far as I'm concerned, I'm seeing these movies help bring back people to the theater. And when Rolland Emmerich makes these excuses, it just shows a lack of class. It just shows a lack of self-awareness. It shows a lack of all of that. Especially when Spider-Man No Way Home recently just did the historical numbers of making $1 billion during a pandemic. The Batman's projected to make $186 million opening weekend domestically, or not domestically, worldwide. Shang-Chi did very well financially. Fast and Furious 9 did well financially. These movies did well financially, and they're bringing people back to the theater. And that's what's important. That's what's important. Because let's say, take away all these big blockbuster movies, these franchise films. You take them away, and guess what? Now these other movies exist, like Last Duel and House of Gucci. Guess what? Those movies would still be, the box office number would still be the same. It would still be the same number. House of Gucci, Last Duel, all these movies, they'd be in the same number that you see them now. Because guess what? People don't care what studio's making it. The general audience doesn't care. Us hardcore movie fans, we do care. But the general audience doesn't know who Ridley Scott is. They don't know who Christopher Nolan is. I mean, they might know them, but they don't really care. They don't care. And the same applies when it comes to a franchise. If Moonfall was a good film, then people would have gone to it. There would have been good word of mouth. The trailers would have been good. The commercials would have been good. But guess what? People just didn't think it was very good. And guess what? Your movie failed because of that. And especially when you're saying these comments prior to the movie comes out, it just makes it look like you have a loser's mentality. It's kind of like if a coach, let's say a basketball coach, let's say coach of the Lakers. Let's say you're a coach of the Lakers. Imagine if before a game you come out and say, oh, well, and let's say you're playing the Brooklyn Nets. So you're facing Kevin Durant, James Harden, and Kyrie Irving. You're about to face them. A coach should be out there and saying, hey, you know what? I believe in my team. I believe we're going to win, and we're going to do anything possible. We're going to work hard to try and get the win that we absolutely need. Imagine if the coach instead said, well, they have the better team, and they're ruining the NBA because they have a better team than us, and they have the better players. That's exactly what Rolland Emmerich comes off as. He comes off as, well, these Marvel movies are doing well because they've succeeded in what they want to do. It's like there's a reason why they succeeded. It's because Marvel, DC, Star Wars, they made good movies, and now the audience trusts them. It's like me. I actually trusted Rolland Emmerich to deliver a great film. Even though I didn't like the trailers for Moonfall or anything, I expected him to make a good film. I expected him to deliver because I had those expectations that a Marvel fan has for Marvel, or that a Star Wars fan has for Star Wars, or for a DC fan has for DC. It's the same thing I had for Rolland Emmerich, especially with a movie like Independence Day. You gotta earn your respect. It's not given. And the same applied with Marvel, DC, Star Wars, all these franchises. The same applied to them. The only difference is they got the trust of the audience, while you are out there making excuses about why Moonfall failed. Moonfall is failing because people didn't like the movie, because people don't think it's very good. It's not failing because it doesn't have the red Marvel logo or the blue DC logo or whatever Star Wars logo or the Lucasfilm logo. It's not failing because of that. It's failing because you didn't make a good film. And also Kamazu B says, I'm loving the marketing for the Batman. Yeah, me too. I think the marketing for the Batman so far, I like the music they're putting. I like everything they have. I just like it all. Also, my camera froze. The second camera froze. I just noticed that. Look. Why did it freeze? Let's see if I can fix that. Let's see. Sorry, I wanna try fixing it. Well, I fixed the camera. I also, by the way, do you guys like that? I have like 2 cameras. I like having this cool little transition, but always remember says, you know that news would be a fake. He probably said only I don't care about Star Wars or Marvel, and then one reporter heard of that and felt that was BS, then wrote down like that. No. He still said it though. He still said it. And even if you fear having your words misrepresented, then don't say anything. Don't say anything. And he said it. He said these words. Let's go. Oh, I didn't even mean to show that. But he said these comments. Let's actually pull them up. Let's pull it up again. Let's pull up exactly what he said. Let's look at the exact quote he said. He said, because naturally, Marvel and DC Comics and Star Wars have pretty much taken over. It's ruining our industry a little bit. Now I get it. He tried playing it safe by saying a little bit. But he still said the comments, it's ruining our industry. And then after that proceeds to say nobody does anything original anymore, even though that's factually been proven false, because there are more original films now than ever. The only difference is people aren't going to watch them, but they're still there. They're still there for you. And again, even just last year, you had movies like Last Duel. You had Last Night in Soho. You had House of Gucci. You had The Green Knight. You had all these films. They're there. Those original films you're looking forward to, they are there. You're just not going to go watch them. I don't get why that's such a hard concept to imagine, but 9 votes say, 78% of you guys say no, Marvel and Star Wars are not ruining cinema. 22% of you guys are saying yes. And again, it's a loser's mentality to come out like this. And again, I always give the example of, imagine you're a basketball coach and before a game you come out and say, oh, the other team is far better than us. There's no chance we win because they're better and they're ruining the NBA or something like that. It's the exact same thing Rolland Emmerich's doing. The only difference is it's for filmmaking. Instead of saying, hey, you know what, because honestly, if you're a filmmaker or an actor or anyone that worked on a film and the movie's about to come out, so you're preparing promotion, Instead of making these comments, just go out and say, hey, you know what? I trust my film. I trust that my movie's going to do well. Or maybe not even talk about the box office. Just talk about the movie itself. Say, hey, look, I trust my actors. I trust the people we worked along with. And we believe we're making a great film. Because how can you expect me to believe your movie's good if you're coming out with these BS excuses a week prior to a movie coming out? How do you expect me to trust your film? How do you expect me to trust it? How do you expect me to have confidence when even the filmmaker himself is making excuses? And the same applies to the NBA or to a basketball coach. How do you expect a fan of the Lakers to trust the coach if the coach comes out and says that our team is not as good as that team because they have better players and they're ruining the NBA? The same applies to filmmaking. The same applies with directors, actors, whatever. I look at all these comments. Moonfall director Rolland Emmerich says Marvel superhero movies and Star Wars are ruining originality in cinema. No, it's not. Because if it is, all these movies are doing is bringing people more to the theater. That's all they're doing. And especially during a pandemic, these movies are important. And again, he should have just kept his mouth shut. And even if he wanted to say something, what he could have said, he could have gone through the Martin Scorsese approach, which was just quickly say, hey, you know what? They're just not for me. I don't like these movies. These movies are not for me. Or I should probably go to the Den of Geek article, not the comicbook.com article. Let's actually pull it up because that's who he talked to. I actually want to read the full Den of Geek article. Rolland Emmerich, Marvel and Star Wars are ruining our industry. Rolland Emmerich reflects how much harder it is to make an original disaster movie. That's actually, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. That is true. It is harder to make an original film. Doesn't matter whether it's a small film or an expensive film. If I will admit, to make an original movie is much harder than to make a Marvel, DC, Star Wars movies, because you, at least with Marvel, DC, and Star Wars, you already have a built-in audience. But again, that's because they gain the confidence of the audience. The only way you get people to your movies is you gain their confidence by making good films. That's how it is. And especially when you give out a good trailer, because whether you want to admit it or not, the trailers for Moonfall weren't all that impressive. But he says, the disaster film has changed a great deal since Rolland Emmerich first blew up the White House in Independence Day. I love Independence Day. More than 25 years ago, back then the genre had fallen relatively dormant following the glory days of Irwin Allen's own golden age for cinematic success, or cinematic max destruction. But from the moment Emmerich's on-screen aliens gleefully detonated the White House during a Super Bowl commercial in 1996, American and global audiences alike were ready for a new breed of spectacle. Since that defining summer movie, by the way, let me drink some water. Since that defining summer movie, Emmerich's seen the genre ebb and flow, soar with humor, and in later years reach for something a little more somber and sensitive. Yet when we sit down with him to discuss his latest bid in the format this month's high-concept sci-fi action adventure, Moonfall, he's reflective on just how hard it is to make such a crowd-pleasing event that's not based on a comic book and in the age of Marvel Studios, DC Entertainment, and Lucasfilm dominating multiplexes and all other seasons. And then Emmerich tells Den of Geek, oh yes, Emmerich tells Den of Geek when asked if the disaster genre has changed in recent years, which is true. The disaster genre has changed. But he said, because naturally Marvel and DC Comics and Star Wars have pretty much taken over. It's ruining our industry anymore, but because nobody does anything original anymore. Look, that's the exact comment. That is the exact statement that was on Deadline. It's the exact same one. The comment is not necessarily surprising for Emmerich, who's spoken in the past about his ambivalence towards superhero movies, particularly Marvel ones, which he once said he likes to watch on planes in order to fall asleep. Oh my God, I completely forgot about that comment. When we talked to him in 2022, he admits the part of that skepticism for the genre stems from the fact that he grew up in Germany many years before the concept of superheroes were successfully transplanted to the market, mostly by Marvel movies. I do like that he says this. I do like that he says, hey, you know what? I didn't grow up on these movies, so obviously they're a different kind of movies. Like for me, I'm not, like a couple of years ago, I had never seen a Western movie. Then I decided to watch that Clint Eastwood film, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. I love that film. And while I'm still not a big Western guy, at least came to appreciate it, but I did understand that I probably wasn't going to love it as much as the Western fan because I didn't grow up on those films. And that's something I respect that he said. I respect that he said this, but to say something like, oh, he watches Marvel movies to fall asleep, like as if he's acting as if Moonfall was the most intriguing thing in the world. I'm sorry, I watched Moonfall, and again, it's subjective. You guys might like it. I don't know, whatever it is. Moonfall was not a very interesting film. It's like it had this silly concept and it took itself way too serious. It is literally a story about the moon falling on Earth. And the movie took itself so serious that it became boring. But let's go back to the Den of Geek article. But I do like that he full out admits, hey, he didn't grow up with these movies, so he's probably not going to like them. Which I admit, I respect that he said that. But then he says Emmerich, there were the adventures of Tintin comics, but they were very childish and there were no superheroes. So that's why at the very beginning, superheroes didn't work in Germany. They needed 10 or 15 years of movies to get to the same level as the rest of the world. But I didn't even mean to drop that Funko Pop. But he says, wait, where was I? Okay, so he says, but I just had never found any interest in that kind of movie. And that is true. Comic book movies took a while to be a big name for themselves. I mean, Batman and Robin existed. It caused a massive decline. A lot of people didn't like Superman Returns. Although I actually quite like Superman Returns. I didn't love it, but I like it. You know, there was a time where comic book movies were just not taken serious. Then Spider-Man, you know, the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies came out. Then you had the Dark Knight trilogy come out. Then, of course, the beginning of, you know, Iron Man 2008 came out. A lot of people love Blade. You know, there's a couple of comic book movies that were starting to come out. You know, the X-Men movies. I forgot. The first original X-Men movie probably changed the landscape for a lot of people. You know, a lot of comic book movies eventually came out and then gained the respect and gained the mass attraction that the current comic book genre has currently at the very moment. But Kamazubi says, I'm not interested in seeing Moonfall. It looks boring. Yeah, I agree. I watched the trailers for Moonfall. They look interesting. I watched the movie. Guess what? I'll say this. The trailers were more exciting than the movie itself. Moonfall did not look very good. And it wasn't very good to me. Especially because the movie just took itself too serious. I went more in depth in my review, but Moonfall took itself too... Imagine if Sharknado took itself seriously. Imagine if that. That's basically what Moonfall is. It had a stupid concept, stupid ideas, wasn't executed very well. The characters weren't even interesting, even though I'm a big fan of Halle Berry and Patrick Wilson. Even with those actors, and Michael Pena, with all these interesting actors, you make a very uninteresting film. Come on, man. But he's saying this when his movie stars comic book stars. You know, Patrick Wilson was King Orm, Halle Berry, Catwoman. Michael Pena was in the Ant-Man movies. Come on, man. But he says, however, Emmerich's larger point about superhero movies as well as Star Wars harming the industry is a new one for the filmmaker, pulling from the popular argument that the repetitious and constant deluge of films all based on the same intellectual property. Marvel has reached a point where they are releasing 4 movies a year, not including Disney Plus series, has conditioned audiences to primarily favor films and formulaic stories, and they're already familiar with the expense of everything else. For instance, Jodie Foster said in 2008, superhero movies are like a fracking where shareholders get the best return right now, but you wreck the earth, ruining the viewing habits of the American population and the rest of the world. That is the biggest lie I've heard. These movies are not succeeding because of a formula. They're succeeding because they made good films, or at least films that the audience finds good, and they gain the trust. When you go to a restaurant, let's say you're picking a restaurant, you're typically going to go to the one you already ate at, and especially if you like that place. Let's say there's this one pizza place, and then there's this one Mexican restaurant. A pizza restaurant and a Mexican restaurant. Let's go to the main camera. Imagine there's these 2 restaurants. Let me use some examples. So Flash will be the pizza place, and Superman will be the Mexican place. You have these 2 restaurants, all right? This pizza place, you know, you've eaten there. You love the food. You've tried many things they've had. They have a great menu with constant great foods. But then you have the Superman card right here, which is the Mexican restaurant. You've never been there, and the outside, the decor looks poor. If you've heard bad reviews on Yelp, I don't know what it is, but you're not going to this restaurant. When you're somebody who's deciding where to eat, you're typically going to go to the place that you've trusted in because they've given you good food in the past, and it's a safe option. It's a safe option. But then you have this, you're obviously rarely going to go to this restaurant, the one that you don't know about, the one that the decor looks poor, and the one that has bad reviews on Yelp. It's the same thing with movies or movie franchises. Marvel gained the trust of the audience. Marvel gained the trust of the average movie-going audience. They gained the audience, and that's why people have trust in them, and that's why they're going to see these blockbuster films. This Moonfall movie didn't look very good. It didn't do well. And don't use the BS excuse. Tenet. A lot of people loved Tenet. It made a decent amount for a pandemic, although it's not a very good amount. But guess what? This is Moonfall right here. It has improved itself. The audience doesn't know whether to trust it. And it's not like the trailers were very good. And the reviews weren't very good. So don't use these BS excuses that Marvel, Star Wars, and DC, they're ruining the franchises, when in reality, what is ruining movies in the movie industry as a whole is bad movies. That's what's ruining movies. It's not this BS excuse of, popular IP. That is not what's ruining movies. What's ruining in movies is when you make bad movies. That's it. There's no formula. There's no plot line. It's the bad movies. How do you think Marvel gained its trust? Why do you think people go watch Marvel movies? Because they gained the audience. They gained the audience's respect, and they gained everyone's respect, and they gained the respect of every single person that goes to go watch these movies. They earned it. Respect is earned. Moonfall didn't earn that. And it's not just about previously established movies. It's also about the trailers. It's also about the commercials. Moonfall didn't have very good commercials to begin with. So don't use this BS excuse that your movie's flopping in the box office just because of Marvel, DC, and Star Wars. Imagine, and again, I go back to the example I used earlier. If you're the coach of the Lakers, and before a game, you're about to play the Brooklyn Nets, and before the game you say, my team's going to lose because they have Kyrie Irving, LeBron James, or not LeBron James, Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, James Harden. Imagine before a game that the Lakers coach comes out and says, we're going to lose because they're ruining the NBA because they have good players. That is the most loser mentality anyone can have, blaming other people for their failures. Just do what it is that you got to do best. And if you're the Lakers coach, instead of complaining about those other teams, you focus on your team and try to focus on the players you have, LeBron James, Anthony Davis, all these other great players, Russell Westbrook, and you try to make the best team possible. It is not the fault of Star Wars or Marvel or DC. The fault is when a filmmaker cannot make a good film. That is the problem. The problem is not the audience watching Marvel movies. The problem is you not making a good enough movie and you not presenting good enough trailers. And sorry for my rant, but Rolland Emmerich's comments are very stupid. But let me read these comments. Let's read some of the comments. Moonlight, like that name. Rolland Emmerich loves to ruin everything. Hey, man, I love Independence Day. I still give the man respect. Let me actually get these closer. Tyran, the Hollywood Geek, says, hey, Isaac, what's up, man? And then he says, yeah, Moonfall sucks. Yeah, I didn't like Moonfall. I didn't like Moonfall. And it is subjective, but, I had to go through a rant to explain how stupid Rolland Emmerich's comments is, which I'm about to finish with Den of Geek. And then it said, Kamazubi says, when I spend my money on movie tickets, that means I'm genuinely interested in seeing a movie. Yeah, and that's the truth. Every moviegoer thinks that. When you give us a good trailer with an interesting premise, with interesting characters and an interesting story, people are going to go watch these movies. It's not about what logo pops up at the beginning of the movie. It's not about what studio happens to make this movie. It's about making a good movie and presenting good trailers. That is what you got to do. And I'm so tired of hearing these filmmakers make stupid BS excuses about why their movies are flopping. Then Moonlight says Emmerich also butchered Godzilla. Yeah, I keep getting those comments. A lot of people really did not like what Emmerich did with Godzilla. And then Tyran, the Hollywood Geek, says directors are just getting upset that people aren't watching their crappy movies, especially Moonfall. Yeah, I agree. Look, if you're a director and you fear that your movie's flopping, just don't say anything. Because a filmmaker's job is not to get the box office. A filmmaker's job is to make the best movie possible. That's all you got to do as a filmmaker, which is already hard in of itself. To make a good movie, that's hard. But just focus on that, and then let the box office do what it's meant to do. And then Moonlight says, "I like your Funko Pop." Thank you. I have it right here. It is my Luke Skywalker with Grogu. I opened it from the box because these Star Wars ones, I like how it has this panel. Most Funko Pops don't have that, but hey, it's a nice little addition, which I have right there. And the next comment says, it says Tyran says it's not Star Wars or Marvel's fault. Yeah, it's not their fault. All they're doing is focusing on making their great projects, which is what Emmerich should do. Emmerich should focus on making a good film instead of focusing on complaining about another movie. And again, this goes back to my basketball example. I'll keep coming. If you're a coach of the Lakers, do not spend your time complaining about other teams being better than you. Focus on making your team best as possible, getting the players on the same page. Focus on making the best team possible, and then put all that work into the courts, which is what a filmmaker should do. They shouldn't be focusing on what another project is doing. They should focus on making the best film possible. And this includes Rolland Emmerich. This includes Christopher Nolan. This includes Steven Spielberg. This includes any filmmaker that's ever existed in all of Hollywood. Come on. And then Tyran says, "Damn, that Captain America hot toy though." Yeah, thanks, man. I have it right here. I think it looks cool. And I like having it right here, just to give you guys a better experience, visually. And then Always Remember says, "I thought the reporter distorted what he said. I must have been mistaken. Oh yeah, about Moonfall. I would have slept if it was not on IMAX low." You're lucky. I'll admit there are some moments in this movie that look visually stunning, and I would have loved to seen it on IMAX. I only went to go watch it on standard, but hey, man, at least you enjoyed it a little more than me. But hey, man, it's understandable. Sometimes that does happen where a reporter is going to twist the words of a person like Scorsese. When he made his first comments, a lot of people got mad at him, although all he said was that he just didn't like Marvel movies and they're not cinema to him. Although his other comments ended up being the most stupid, moronic thing any professional could ever do. And then he says, Always Remember says, "It's not Godzilla, it's Zilla." Yeah, it is. And then the Elite says he makes the same movie over and over again. True. Emmerich makes the same movie over and over again. Maybe instead of doing that, the same movie. Actually, I'm fine if he does the same movie. Just make it good. Just make it great. You could use the excuse that Christopher Nolan does a similar movie every time. Dwayne Johnson, he does similar roles all the time. Jumanji feels similar to Skyscraper. Skyscraper feels similar to Rampage. But guess what? He's making movies that the general audience likes. He's focusing on that. He's not focusing on what Marvel is doing. He's not focusing on what Star Wars is doing. He's focusing on making a good movie. But yeah. Tyran the Hollywood Geek says, "Moonfall was so bad that I had to go to the restroom to take a crap and left the theater. I was extremely bored by it." I'll admit, I think it was like 40 minutes into it, I was already bored. And that's actually the last thing any movie should ever do. When you're a filmmaker, the last thing you want to do is bore the audience. And even if you make a bad movie, like Sharknado. I don't know how many Sharknado movies there are, but Sharknado, a lot of people agree that it's a really bad film. But it wasn't boring, and it got the money that it got financial success. Being boring is the last thing any movie can do, because movies are entertainment. And the point of entertainment is to take your mind off something else and focus on that and just enjoy the experience you're getting. Whether it's a drama, whether it's comedy, whether it's horror, whatever it is, it's entertainment. Same thing applies with music. Same thing applies with art. Same thing applies with anything like that. That's entertainment. If you're boring the audience, then you're not doing your job properly. And this includes me too. The people listening on Spotify, the people watching YouTube. By the way, the people who are showing up, I do have... This show will go on Spotify if you want to listen to it later, which won't pop up for some reason. I don't know what's the case with that. But I do have a Spotify version, which link in the description down below. Oh, there it goes. It popped up. There it is. It's now here. Although for some reason the episode is not popping up, but you can go find it. Link in the description down below. But the problem is never the general audience. The problem is whether you're making a good movie or not. And the last thing you want to do is bore the audience. That is the single last thing any movie should do. And that is bore the audience. And Moonfall sadly is that. But let's try continuing to read the rest of the comments, shall we? which for some reason, wait, let me go back. Oh, there it is. Okay, where was I? By the way, let me drink some water. They really did show like a professionalism that can't be argued. But yeah, and then it says, and after the fall 2021 movie season, the fruits of that argument are difficult to dismiss. When Spider-Man No Way Home can gross 1.7 billion and counting, becoming the 6th highest grossing movie of all time during the pandemic, while original films from beloved directors like Steven Spielberg with West Side Story or Ridley Scott in the ancient period piece Sweet Spot via The Last Duel can infamously flop. And look, I wish Last Duel didn't flop, because although I'm not the biggest Last Duel fan, I thought it was a pretty good film. West Side Story, one of the best films of the year. You guys saw my ranking of 2021. I put it there. And I know these movies flopped, but they didn't flop because of Spider-Man No Way Home. They flopped because the audience was more interested in Spider-Man No Way Home's trailers than they were for West Side Story or Last Duel. The problem is not what No Way Home did. All it's doing is minding its own business. All John Watts, Kevin Feige, and everyone that worked on this film, all they did was mind their own business and make the best movie possible. And look, West Side Story and Last Duel weren't at fault either. It's just that the audience chose to go to No Way Home because those trailers, those commercials intrigued them the most. But then let's continue. Emmerich, including Star Wars, is also interesting since he's previously said George Lucas's original 1977 movie was one of the key inspirations that led him to become a director. You can see its influence on the many sci-fi dogfight sequences in Independence Day, for example. But now he admits, unless you're making a film based on an IP as popular and saturated as Star Wars has become in the last 7 years, it's become to get financing for an original project tomorrow, even a disaster movie like Moonfall from the director of Independence Day 4 and The Day After Tomorrow. And then there's a comment he said, you should make bold new movies. Emmerich tells us, and I think actually Christopher Nolan is the master of that. He's someone who can make movies about whatever he wants. I have it a little bit harder, but I still have a big enough name, especially when it's a disaster movie. And look, I agree with this paragraph specifically. I do think Christopher Nolan right now is kind of the king of original film, because Universal was willing to spend a lot of money just to get him on board to do that Oppenheimer film that he originally created. And then he does have it harder than Nolan, but that's because Nolan earned his position. And don't use the excuse of that he made those comic book movies, Dark Knight. Even prior to that, all the movies besides The Dark Knight, Inception, Insomnia, Interstellar, all those movies came out. Guess what? That gained the audience's trust on for Christopher Nolan. But when you have Rolland Emmerich making a bad Godzilla film, making Moonfall, making all these other bad disaster movies, that's where the audience doesn't gain your trust. Also, I feel like I missed a chat. Moonlight says, I didn't like Tenet in my opinion. Hey man, that's understandable. It's all subjective. I liked it personally, but hey, I understand you didn't like it. And then Always Remember says, what Scorsese said about Marvel, it's just a different experience. Yeah, I agree. That is the best comment anyone can say when they're not a fan of Marvel or comic book movies in general. Also, why do I have this ad? Anyways, and that's the best comment you could do. It's just say, hey, you know what? These movies aren't for me. And then move on. But instead, Rolland Emmerich decided to take the stupid route, which sadly Francis Ford Coppola did. Sadly, Ridley Scott's done. And look, these are directors I respect. Denis Villeneuve recently made Dune, a movie I love. Francis Ford Coppola made 2 of my favorite movies of all time, with Godfather Part 1, Godfather Part 2. And then Rolland Emmerich, he made Independence Day. And it's sad because a lot of these filmmakers that say this are the same people who have made movies I love. But anyways, it's how Emmerich got the funding for an original idea he had for Moonfall. What if the moon was not a natural object, but a mega structure, as some conspiracy theories happily suggest? And what if that mega structure actually started to fall on the earth? It's a concept Emmerich's been trying to get off the ground for years, and it finally arrives in theaters later this week. We'll have more on that film and our full interview with the director in the next few days. And yeah, those were the full comments. And those were Rolland Emmerich. That's what he said. I don't get how you can say movies like comic book movies are destroying the cinema when you're making movies about what a conspiracy theory thinks the Earth did or the moon's doing. I don't get it. Where's the logic behind that? And hey, I know there's some people who like Moonfall. I've seen some good reviews on it. Because, all film is subjective, and, I'm not those morons who's going to criticize somebody just because they like a movie. But sadly, Rolland Emmerich is one of them. Sadly, he is one of them. Don't know why. Don't know why you got to attack another movie. Why? Like, come on, why? And then we have 12 votes. 83% of you guys are, 83% of you guys believe Marvel and Star Wars are not ruining cinema. 17% of you guys do believe it's ruining cinema, which I'm assuming one person believes. Out of the 12 votes, only one person believes that these movies are ruining cinema. But the rest of you guys do not. And look, if you don't like these movies, that's fine. But to say they're ruining cinema is probably the dumbest thing I can hear anyone say. And again, all film is subjective. All film is subjective. But to make these stupid comments, it doesn't look very good for you. It doesn't look like a very good reputation to have. And I don't even know why. Why? Why do you got to take away the joy from somebody else? But yeah, that's all I have to say on the Rolland Emmerich thing. I don't know. It's just embarrassing that a filmmaker with so much credibility, so much love, so much passion to his filmmaking. I don't know how you can be such a great and talented filmmaker and say such dumb comments. But anyways, guys, and also always remember, says like comedy is subjective. Yeah, that's true. Comedy is subjective. Same thing with movies. Movies are subjective. Not everyone's going to enjoy the same humor. Just the same way not everyone's going to enjoy the same movie. Some people are going to like, some people are going to like Kevin Hart. And then there's going to be other people who don't like Kevin Hart or Dave Chappelle or Gabriel Iglesias. Not everyone's going to like the same comedy. Some people are, but some people aren't. Same thing applies with movies. Some of you guys are going to love Moonfall. And then some of you guys are not going to like Moonfall, which that includes me. But guess what? At the end of the day, we shouldn't be arguing whether or not you enjoyed a film or not. What we should talk about is our differences and enjoy, how blessed we are. That we live in an age where, we have all these movies at our hands, whether it's streaming, whether it's DVD, Blu-ray, whatever it is. We should be enjoying the moment we're in right now. Instead of complaining about what another filmmaker's doing or what another studio's doing. Let's stop complaining about that. Let's stop. It's immature. It's unprofessional. And it shows a lack of class. But anyways, we've gone over an hour. Thank you guys for showing support today on today's stream. I would like to give you a message from Reverse Isaac once again. All right. Well, we're gonna end off today's show. It was a great episode, and if you're watching on Spotify, give us a 5-star. It's really simple, and that's actually one thing I want to ask to the people on YouTube. Even if you don't plan on listening to us on Spotify, it does help support the channel. If you go there, you hit the follow button, and you give us a 5-star review. It's really quickly. It's really simple. Link is in the description down below. It helps support the channel. It helps do a lot. And it'll be supporting, the Spotify podcast. Because some people just can't watch YouTube. And, if we already got the first episode of Multiverse Movie Show. This video will go to that podcast. And the people who are on Spotify, just gonna give you, I want to thank everyone who's watching, whether it's Spotify, YouTube, wherever it is. It means a lot wherever you are watching. Sadly, we haven't put it on Apple Podcasts or SoundCloud. We've yet to do that. Also, always remember says lol that costume. Yeah, that's gonna be a fun thing we do. It's called Reverse Isaac. It's a fun thing we're gonna do. Sometimes, in fact, we're gonna have Reverse Isaac maybe talk about certain topics. Like, for example, we started off today talking about ObiWan Kenobi coming on Disney Plus in May. Sometimes we're gonna have him do certain topics and have me do the other topics. But he's from the multiverse of movies. He's from a different timeline. Apparently, Earth 6-9. And I think it's a fun thing. But yeah, that's going to end off today's show. Thank you guys for watching today's episode of the Multiverse of Movies show. I'm, of course, your host, Isaac. And if you want to follow us outside of YouTube, we do have Instagram and Twitter at Isaac the Film Geek. Come message us. Come talk to us. We have a lot of fun there. I already have a lot of subscribers. Sometimes we'll talk, I give my first initial thoughts there on a movie or show. For example, Moonfall came out, and I gave my first reaction to Moonfall over there on my Twitter. So you go ahead and follow me there. And, of course, I want to thank all the members who are supporting the channel financially. Pedro Bonilla, BK Dan, Rhea, Jedi Sith Master, and Cobra Kai Never Dies, who are supporting the channel financially. And if you're probably wondering what some of the perks are, you are going to be entered for... Oh, I don't have it here, but... You're going to be entered for a Batman Funko Pop giveaway, which I have all the way over there. I would get it, but I've already shown it on other streams, so some of you guys already know. And again, it's only 99 cents a month, and it helps support the channel financially. You'll be given a shout out in every one of my videos. And we are going to be doing a new series on the channel called Members Mailbag, where every Sunday we upload, where you guys will be in the comment section. The members, you guys get to ask questions. I'll answer all of them in a video and put it out. And it's going to be just for you guys. And you'll be entered for giveaways, stickers, or whatever. But anyways, thank you guys for watching today's show. It was a great show. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace.
Army couldn't hold me back.